You think you're actually going to fly that thing? The Griffin HX-9 isn't for mechanics." The laughter came from across the tarmac cloud, sharp and meant to sting. Lieutenant Ava Moreno didn't flinch. She adjusted the cuffs of her flight gloves and kept walking. Her boots hit the concrete like metronomes, steady and unbothered. The officers watching from the hangar didn't even try to hide their amusement. "Is she serious?" someone whispered. "She's not even on the flight list." "Yeah, well, dream big, grease monkey." Ava had heard it all before. Every nickname, every smirk, every smug assumption about who gets to sit in the cockpit and who stays under the hood. She was 29, half Vietnamese, half Puerto Rican, and all invisible to the command that ran Granite Ridge Air Base. On paper, she was a support technician, an excellent one. The best, really. The Griffin HX-9 helicopters, she maintained, were state-of-the-art sleek, carbon fiber beasts, engineered for rescue, combat, and speed. Only 16 pilots in the entire military were certified to fly them, each one hand-picked, each one a man. But Ava? She wasn't even supposed to dream of flying them. 7 years earlier, a shadow had been cast over her entire future. Her father, Lieutenant Colonel Elias Moreno, had died in a mission gone sideways. The official report blamed poor intel. A coordination error. The man who gave those flawed orders? Now the base commander. Ava never got angry. She got quiet. And she got better. She studied, trained in silence, perfected simulations, memorized protocols. She had a perfect record from the Air Force Academy. But none of that mattered when your last name carried a ghost. That Tuesday morning in November was supposed to be just like the others. Cold wind, routine checks, paperwork no one ever read. She was elbow deep in hydraulic fluid when the emergency alarm screamed through the base. Code red. Flash flood in grid sector 6 Bravo. Immediate rescue required. A chill hit Ava's spine. 4 soldiers. Trapped. Rising waters. The kind of situation the Griffin HX-9 was built for. The crew roster scrambled into chaos. 1 pilot was injured. Another was on leave. Another was grounded for medical review. No backups. No one left. Ava stood in the maintenance bay, hands coated in oil, heart slamming in her chest. She looked at the Griffin HX-9 tail number, 77 Alpha, glistening under fluorescent light. No one told her to move. No one even noticed when she dropped the wrench, peeled off her coveralls, and walked toward the aircraft. She didn't ask for clearance. She didn't need to. The situation asked for courage, and she had 7 years worth stored inside her. By the time she climbed into the cockpit, the comms tower lit up with static confusion. Who's initiating engine sequence on 77 Alpha? Pilot 17 is out. Who's in that bird? This is Tower. Confirm identity. Ava clicked the radio. Her voice, for the first time in years, was clear and commanding. This is Lieutenant Ava Moreno. I'm qualified and ready for immediate departure to Sector 6 Bravo. There was a beat of silence. Then, panic. Negative. You are not authorized. Return to maintenance duties immediately. But Ava was already airborne. The Griffin HX-9 lifted like a mechanical angel, silent, elegant, unstoppable. Below, officers ran from buildings, staring skyward in disbelief. A mechanic was flying their most elite aircraft like she was born in its seat. Radios crackled in disarray. Someone shouted, "Intercept her!" Another barked, "Scramble another bird!" But no one followed. She was already slicing through the sky. And far away, at the gate of Granite Ridge Air Base, a black government sedan pulled up. The man who stepped out wore 3 stars on each collar. General Daniel Grayson, the same man her father had once disobeyed orders for to save his life. He looked up, squinting against the morning glare, just in time to see Griffin HX-9 disappearing into the misty Colorado horizon. His aide ran up, winded and panicked. "Sir, we have an unauthorized flight. No clearance. It's a tech, sir. Ava Moreno." Grayson froze mid-step. "Moreno?" He turned slowly. "Is she related to Elias Moreno?" The aide nodded. "Yes, sir. According to her file, she's his daughter." Something in the general's expression shifted, like he'd seen a ghost and a reckoning at once. He didn't speak for several seconds. The aide hesitated. "Sir, should we order her back?" Grayson looked again at the sky, at the storm cloud she was flying toward, and with a voice that had commanded legions, he said simply, "Number, we wait. Because some people don't need permission. They just need a chance. The storm over the Rocky Mountains wasn't just weather, it was a wall. Wind shear howled between jagged peaks, thunder cracked like battlefield explosions, and rain lashed against the Griffin HX-9's cockpit like 1,000 tiny fists. But inside the pilot's seat, Lieutenant Ava Moreno was still, focused, alive. She had spent 7 years fixing these birds. She knew how they breathed, how they reacted, how they complained when pushed too hard. And now, she was pushing HX-9 Tail 77 Alpha to its edge and beyond. Griffin 77 Alpha, this is Granite Ridge Command. The radio squawked, desperate and angry. You are ordered to return to base immediately. This is a direct command. Ava exhaled, reached for the dial and switched frequencies. She was done listening to fear. Any call sign, she transmitted, her voice steady. This is Griffin Rescue. I'm inbound to Sector 6. Bravo, please respond. For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then life. Griffin Rescue. This is Sergeant Martinez. The voice was ragged, soaked in exhaustion. We're on the roof of our Humvee. Water's rising fast. Can't hold much longer. Ava's jaw tightened. She punched through the last cloud wall and saw it. The disaster zone. Below her, 4 soldiers clung to a partially submerged vehicle. Angry brown floodwater surged around them like a living thing, fast and deadly. Debris slammed past in violent current-street trunks, metal barrels, pieces of ruined road. One wrong move, and they'd be gone. The landing zone? Non-existent. Power lines flanked 3 sides. Trees boxed in the 4th. She had maybe 20 feet of clearance. Maybe. It was the kind of rescue that only a certified ace was supposed to attempt. The kind of operation that Command refused to let her fly. This was why they called her just a mechanic. And this was exactly why they were wrong. Ava flipped into hover mode and eased the bird downward, inch by inch. 6 feet above the water, the Griffin bucked in the wind. Rain blurred her vision, but her hands were steady, her nerves iron. She grabbed the loudspeaker mic. Listen carefully, she called down. 1 at a time. Secure the harness around your chest. I've got you. The first soldier stared up, blinking through chaos. Through the cockpit windshield, he could barely see her, but what he saw shook him. A woman. Calm. Composed. Asian features behind the glare of the console lights. And behind her, a rescue cable descending like salvation. Who are you? He shouted. Ava didn't hesitate. The one who doesn't leave soldiers behind. One by one, she hauled them each heavier than the last, each more battered. The second was shivering uncontrollably. The third had a shattered arm. The 4th Sergeant Martinez himself was barely conscious, lips blue from cold and exhaustion. As she pulled him into the cabin, the Humvee gave a long, metallic groan and disappeared beneath the flood. 30 seconds later, and none of them would have made it. The flight back was worse. Lightning crackled near enough to make her instruments flicker. Turbulence hit like punches from a heavyweight, but Ava kept the HX-9 steady, navigating pure chaos with the precision of a surgeon. 47 minutes, 4 lives saved, and every second flown in defiance of everything she had been told she couldn't do. At Granite Ridge, the base was holding its breath. The airfield had filled with silent spectators' officers, tech crews, clerks, even the cafeteria staff. Everyone had stopped what they were doing to watch. Even the base commander stood on the tarmac, arms folded, jaw clenched, waiting to reprimand the unauthorized technician who had hijacked military hardware. Then, over the tree's rotors sliced the sky. The Griffin HX-9 returned. It came in low and smooth, like a hawk landing on silk. Ava touched down without so much as a jolt. She shut down both engines, unclipped her harness, opened the cockpit door, and stepped out into complete silence. Then movement. Through the crowd, a single figure walked forward. General Daniel Grayson. 3 stars gleamed on his collar. Officers stepped aside instinctively. No one dared interrupt. He stopped exactly 3 feet from Ava. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he removed his cap and saluted. "Greetings, Pilot 17, he said, his voice carrying across the tarmac like thunder. "The person I once owed my life to." Ava's eyes widened, that face older now, but familiar. Photographs, her father's study, the name spoken in hushed tones. General Grayson had been there. He was the man her father had saved 7 years ago. The man whose rescue had cost Elias Moreno his life. The general's voice wavered. "Your father disobeyed orders to pull me out of a kill zone," he said. "He died following the same flawed intel that nearly killed me. I tried to look out for you afterward. I failed." He looked around at the stunned faces surrounding them. "I let bureaucracy bury your wings. I let protocol silence your future. That ends today." A hush rippled through the crowd. Because in that moment, the ranks didn't matter. Only the truth did. And that truth stood right there in a soaked flight suit, oil still under her nails, and eyes that had never blinked in the face of a storm. You could hear a pin drop on the tarmac. No one moved. Not the officers who had laughed at Ava earlier that morning. Not the maintenance crew who once called her better with a wrench than wings. Not even the base commander, whose authority had just been shattered in one silent gesture. General Grayson held his salute. Ava returned it, crisp and unwavering, every ounce the officer she had always been but had never been allowed to become. "I made a promise to your father," Grayson said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I told him I'd make sure his daughter got her fair shot, and then I let red tape and politics shut you down." Ava's throat tightened. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Grayson stepped forward, eyes hard with resolve. "Lieutenant Ava Moreno is no mechanic," he said, turning to the stunned faces behind him. "She is a fully qualified, top-ranked pilot, with more simulator hours and technical expertise than half the men I've signed off to fly this very model." He turned to the base commander, who stood frozen, lips pressed into a line of restrained fury. "Commander Briggs," Grayson said calmly, "explain to me why her name isn't on the flight roster." The man stammered. "Tu believed her father's record made her emotionally unstable for duty. There were questions of judgment." "Questions of judgment?" Grayson barked. "You mean the judgment that saved 4 soldiers this morning, under conditions that would have grounded your entire elite roster?" Briggs opened his mouth, then shut it. Behind them, the 4 rescued soldiers were being escorted from the helicopter. Still wet, shaken, but alive. One of them, Sergeant Martinez, limped forward arm in a sling, face pale from shock and adrenaline. "She flew like a machine," he said, voice hoarse. Not a machine, like someone who's been flying her whole life." He looked directly at the commander. "Sir, I don't know why she wasn't already one of your lead pilots, but if I ever go down again, I pray to God she's the one coming for me." The crowd stirred, heads nodded, shoulders straightened. A shift was happening slow, but undeniable. Grayson turned back to Ava. "You've done more than enough for one day, Lieutenant, but I need you to report to Heritage Hall tomorrow, 1400 sharp." Heritage Hall. The word echoed across the crowd like a sacred name. That building wasn't for briefings or paperwork. It was for ceremonies, for legends, for names carved into the history of the Air Force. Ava nodded, silent. She didn't need to celebrate. Her flight had already spoken louder than any medal ever could. The next day, at exactly 1,400 hours, Ava stood at the steps of Heritage Hall in her full dress uniform. It had been years since she'd worn it, not out of disrespect, but because no one had asked her to. Now, she entered the hall not as a ghost in overalls, but as Pilot 17. General Grayson was waiting inside, his posture straight beneath the portraits of historic aviators' faces frozen in time, each one etched into legacy. "Come in, Lieutenant," he said. She did. On the far wall, a new frame had been mounted overnight. It wasn't hers. It was her father's. Lieutenant Colonel Elias Moreno, in full uniform, eyes bright and commanding, the kind of photo that held decades of honor in a single glance. Beneath it, a brass plaque. "He trained the successor we failed to recognize." Ava stepped closer, her breath caught. She remembered that photo. He kept it in his home office, just above his old flight gloves. She hadn't seen it in years. Grayson approached her with a small velvet case. Inside was a silver patch. It shimmered in the light, shaped like a flying griffin soaring over storm clouds, with threads so detailed it looked alive. "Griffin Silver," Grayson explained, "awarded only to pilots who complete Level 5 risk rescues under combat-level conditions. There are only 11 in the world." He paused. "Now there are 12. Ava held the patch in her hands, eyes locked on its weight. "I was just doing what needed to be done," she whispered. "No," Grayson said. "You were doing what no one else dared to do, When rules failed, when fear froze, the system you stepped in. That's not bravery, that's leadership. A long pause followed. Ava pinned the Griffin silver to her uniform, her fingers steady now. Then Grayson said something she would never forget. From this day forward, no one at this base will call you a mechanic. You are Pilot 17. You represent everything the HX-9 program was built for. Ava didn't smile. She just straightened her back and nodded. Because recognition wasn't her goal. It was restoration. Back at the hangar, the murmurs had shifted. Did you hear? She's the one with the Griffin silver. They say she flew through a thunderstorm like it was nothing. She's the reason that crew's still breathing. The same mouths that once mocked her now whispered her name with awe. And in the middle of it all, Ava walked past them without a word, not smug, not angry. Just ready. Because now, she didn't have to prove anything. The air felt different on the flight line. Not lighter, not louder, just still, like something unspoken had settled across the base. A silent correction in the balance of power. Lieutenant Ava Moreno stood beside Griffin HX-9 Tail 77 Alpha, her flight suit crisp, the silver Griffin patch gleaming on her shoulder. She ran her palm gently across the helicopter's fuselage, not out of pride, but familiarity. She had earned every inch of this aircraft, with years of grease, sweat, and patience. She didn't need the stares from officers anymore. She didn't need the whispers either. But they came anyway, softer now, respectful. Lieutenant. Ma'am. Pilot 17. The same voices that once mocked her now cleared the way when she passed. But Ava never changed her stride. She didn't hold grudges. She didn't gloat, because victory isn't always loud. Sometimes, it simply walks forward calm, steady, undeniable. Later that week, the base held an official recognition ceremony. Not the kind with balloons and champagne, but the kind that mattered. Medals, citations, and orders signed by generals. Every pilot, technician, and officer at Granite Ridge was required to attend. Ava didn't speak at the ceremony. She didn't need to. General Grayson spoke for her. She didn't break protocol, he said. She fulfilled its highest purpose, to protect life, even when systems fail. That is the pilot I salute today. He didn't mention the flight report, but everyone had read it. Ava had flown into a classified Level 5 storm cell. She had executed 4 back-to-back vertical extractions with less than 20 feet of clearance. She had navigated through a mountain pass known for shredding choppers like paper. And she had returned flawless. After the ceremony, some of the base's top pilots approached her. Some shook her hand. Some didn't say anything at all. But they didn't have to. The looks in their eyes, that quiet acknowledgement, was enough. One of them, Captain Jason Rains, a former skeptic, hesitated before saying, "I guess I was wrong about you." Ava tilted her head. "No, Captain, you were wrong about what a pilot looks like." He smiled, just a little, and walked away. Weeks passed. Ava's name appeared on the official flight roster, not just as a substitute, but as lead pilot of Griffin HX-9 operations at Granite Ridge. Her call sign, 17, not because it was the next number in line, but because she had flown without permission and earned it anyway. She began training new recruits, young men and women, some nervous, some arrogant, all watching her with curiosity. Some asked, "Is it true you weren't allowed to fly?" She would always give the same answer. "I didn't wait for permission. I prepared for the moment." One afternoon, she returned to Heritage Hall alone. The staff had left it open for her. She stood beneath her father's portrait, the brass plaque glinting softly in the quiet room. Who trained the successor we failed to recognize? She didn't cry, but her hand lingered on the frame. "Dad," she whispered, "you didn't just save the general's life, you saved mine too. Even when they buried your legacy, you were still guiding me." Behind her, Grayson entered quietly. "He used to tell me," he said gently, "the best pilots know when to obey and when to rise above the checklist." Ava turned. "I think that's why they feared me." Grayson nodded. "And why we need more like you." He handed her a sealed envelope official orders. "You're being reassigned," he said. "Pentagon liaison. You'll be helping select and train the next generation of HX-9 candidates across all branches." She stared at him. "I'm not sure I belong in DC." Grayson raised a brow. "You belong anywhere a pilot is told no because they don't fit the mold." She accepted the orders, tucked them into her jacket, and smiled for the first time in weeks. As she left Heritage Hall, a group of junior cadets were walking past the hangars. One of them, a young woman barely out of boot camp, spotted Ava and stopped. "Ma'am, is it true?" she asked breathlessly. "You weren't allowed to fly until the day you rescued those soldiers." Ava paused, looked the girl in the eye, and said softly, "Sometimes they won't let you take the controls until they see you're the only one who can." The girl nodded, not just in understanding, but in belief. Because belief was all Ava had for years. Belief in her father's legacy. Belief in her own skill. And belief that one day, truth would be louder than politics. Greatness doesn't always wear medals or demand applause. Sometimes, it walks the quiet path, one wrench, one storm, one impossible flight at a time. And when the moment comes, it doesn't ask, "Can I?" It says, "Watch me." So, the next time someone tells you that you don't belong, remember Lieutenant Ava Moreno, because when everyone else froze, she flew. Have you ever been overlooked because of how you look or where you came from? Share your story below. You never know, someone might be waiting to salute you too.